Today I'm talking to Johnny Ball, who's most famous for being a children's television presenter in the 70s and 80s and is also a climate change skeptic. Johnny Ball, thank you so much for talking to RT. Now, you are famous for boiling things down to their essence, so I wonder if we could just start with you explaining the current accepted theory behind climate science and where you think climate scientists are going wrong.
Well, it all started at the very beginning, and it alarmed me because it didn't seem to tie in with what I already understood about the way the world works, life on Earth works. Life on Earth is based on three items. That's oxygen, water, and CO2. And the three intermix. When you burn anything, you're burning a hydrocarbon, and you produce CO2 and water. But you can't burn anything without the oxygen. So if you demonize one, you'd have to demonize the others. Every time you produce a molecule of CO2, you produce 2 molecules of water. So if you're going to demonize CO2, you better demonize water as well. Then I looked at what they were talking about, and they were saying it wasn't CO2 in the atmosphere, it was man-made CO2 in the atmosphere. Well, the CO2 in the atmosphere, there's only about one particle in every 2,500. But of the man-made CO2, that's only about 4% at the most. In the UK, we produce 2% of that at the most. And so you're now talking about minuscule amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere. The CO2 then has a very major function, and that is to feed all plants. Trees grow to an optimum height because of the warmth of the CO2, the height it gets to, and it thins out. When you go skiing, you find that there are trees perhaps, and they get craggy, and really craggy, and they look sick. The truth of the matter is, up there, they're existing on less CO2. And they've learnt to do that and survive. And lichen may be covered by snow for all but a month, but as soon as it's uncovered, it grabs the CO2, it's minimal though it is. That's enough to sustain its life through the year. And this is the way it works with CO2, slightly heavier. Now, when you get tropical climates, the trees can be higher, and jungle canopies are much higher because there's more CO2. So there's all kind of aspects of this that show that CO2 is the natural exchange between plants and animals, and it's absolutely natural.
You're essentially saying two things. One, that CO2 is essential for life on Earth, and two, that mankind isn't responsible for creating surplus amounts of CO2.
Plants on land, rotting and fermenting, including leaves and things, produce about 350 billion tonnes of CO2 a year. Man and his industry produces at most 24 billion tonnes. You're talking about a factor of 14. So nature is producing 14 times as much. But of all the plants on Earth, only 20% are on land. 80% of all plants on Earth are in the oceans and the seas, all with the same metabolism. They need CO2, they take CO2, in fact they produce CO2. Calcium carbonate, your caves are made from CO2. Without the CO2, they just wouldn't happen. The shells of crabs and things require CO2 to form them. So you see there's this total exchange, and the exchange can be upset. It can be upset, but to a degree that to me is so minimal that the whole furore is crazy.
So how is it that you think climate scientists have got it so wrong?
I think there was a lobby that says we've got to stop the world progressing. We've got to stop technology progressing. We've got to stop capitalism, if you like. And we've somehow got to haul everything back. And that's the idea. And when you talk to the Greens, you find that they usually want technologies that are less efficient than the technology we have. Well, if they're less efficient, there'll be a greater weight on the world. And in actual fact, we're looking for greater efficiency. One example, gas-fired electrical power stations in the last 18 years have doubled their efficiency through feeding the steam back again and making it work out, for using rare earth magnets that are much more powerful. So that means in a gas-fired power station, we're getting twice as much energy from the same fossil fuel as we got 18 years ago. Now that is a tremendous success story. The Greens don't want it told. Why? And you have to wonder why.
Isn't it better, though, to do something in response to this perceived threat from CO2 rather than just leaving it as it is? I mean, surely any kind of research and development is progression.
Absolutely so. But you've got to back the right ones. Right. Gas in Britain costs about, electricity from gas, 2.3p a unit. From nuclear, 2.5p. From coal, 2.8 or 9p. From wind, 9.8 pence. It's crazy. And not one wind generator would be built without subsidy. Now that's frightening, because that's costing us a fortune for something that's substandard. And when we built all the ones we've built and have planned, 2 new nuclear generators, or 1 new nuclear generator and 1 new gas generator, will outdistance them all. And nuclear is carbon-free. It doesn't produce CO2. So why do the Greens not want to go for nuclear? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. It's a political motivation, nothing to do with efficiency. Now, in America, they've just done 2 things this last week. The Senate voted 6-4 to have nothing more to do with the UN's International Panel on Climate Change. Not to fund it, not to back it, and not to be interested in their reports. I think that's wonderful. Something else they said, they agree. They're producing grain to produce ethanol has been a total and unmitigated disaster in the United States, and has actually cost a tremendous amount and even increased the carbon footprint. But more than that, the reduction in their food product, their grain for food, has meant a doubling of wheat prices and other prices. And that has affected the very countries who demand or require aid in kind from the USA. And those countries, 90% of their population at least, are working class or poorer. Can I name a few? Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Jordan, and what's happening there. Now the question is the squeeze on Britain because of the levies, 50% of our energy bills on subsidies for wind, 50% of our airfares on subsidies to reduce carbon, 66% of our taxes of the cost of our petrol and diesel. It is squeezing working people. And every child, this is the point. This is why I'm taking this high profile, because I'm interested in kids and the welfare of kids. Every child in Great Britain is poorer by an enormous degree because of us putting that money into fatuous areas, ridiculous areas that don't ever prove they're worth the candle.
And you, in fact, also object to the way that climate science is taught in schools. So it's not just financially detrimental to children, but also psychologically, you say.
What should we tell our kids about the future? 2 alternatives. Let's tell our kids, the grown-ups have messed the world up so much, frankly, we want you to cure it while you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Cure it now. Switch your standby lights off, switch the lights off, save energy. Do an audit and see how much energy you use. That's preposterous. It's preposterous. When Matthew Bolton was selling steam engines, one mine owner said, "Oh, I've got 100 men down there with shovels, I'm happy." And he said, "Why don't you put 1,000 men down with teaspoons?" It's the wrong way round. He said, take on the steam engine, you'll double your profits and double your output. We need children to learn, to want to become scientists, technologists, engineers. Environmental scientists, by all means. Engineers, we want them to improve the world. We want them to pick the baton up. And when I looked at my life, 7 decades, every 10 years, you can see the marked improvements. The marked improvements. Heart transplants somewhere in the middle. All kinds of things. Really brilliant improvements. The Clean Air Act in the 1950s. Now all our buildings, if you build a stone building, it stays the same colour. It didn't used to be. It used to be black within a year or two. All those things. The catalytic converter, which produces nitrogen and oxygen instead of nitrous oxide, and instead of unburnt carbons, semi-burnt carbons and carbon monoxide, it produces carbon dioxide. Why? Because it's harmless. And it's been great, and it's wonderful, and it's cleaner, our air, so it's cleaner than it's ever been in history. And all those things are wonderful. And we need to tell our kids, don't you see, we've actually not done a bad job. But you, with the technology, with the communications technology, with the computers, will do so much better. So you have faith you'll make good better by picking up the baton. And what is genius? Picking up the baton and taking it one step further. That's genius.
How has climate science become so politicised, do you think?
Well, it is, and it's nothing else but politicised. It is definitely not based on science. You see, they say it's the consensus. Well, eugenics was by consensus. A lynch mob was by consensus. Hitler was accepted by consensus. You know, consensus means nothing. It really doesn't. You need, as somebody said, lovely, a quotation from Burke, the scoundrel will always succeed if good men say nothing. Well, I'm very flattered that he considered me a good man. But somebody sent that email the other day, and I said, it's absolutely right. I've got to stand up. And I've got to stand up because I've been working with kids for 30, 40 years. I believe in them. I believe in the next generation. I believe, good or bad, whatever we do to them, they're going to have to carry the baton. They're going to be the next generation with all the jobs. So surely if we can get their minds into gear, if I can help get their minds into the right attitude about science and technology, then it's all worthwhile.
Johnny Ball, thank you very much.
Pleasure.